Burnt toast!
And scene.
I managed to screw myself all up.
Good evening. Well, we'll start that again. Ah,
What am I looking like there?
Short left.
Okay. Yeah, the left is killing me.
Like your hips. Yeah.
hello and welcome to the Burnt Toast Show. We're on episode 11. 11. This one goes up to 11. And
In tribute to Spinal Tap.
I am joined once again by the immaculate Pope Dave Bell. Immaculate, baby. Immaculate. I so enjoy when we can do these together because it's less like me just talking endlessly and more like us just talking endlessly.
Endlessly, which is what we do.
Which, yeah, it's almost like we're having a conversation and we hadn't already planned out everything that we were going to say ahead of time.
Well, we didn't plan what we were going to say. We planned the music around what we were going to say.
Right. Yeah, the music was secondary. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
But anyway, we so appreciate everybody that's checking things out. I want to point out right away that what we're doing is we're working from a playlist. If you're watching this video, you just click below the video, the Burnt Toast Show channel, and then go to playlists, and this would be playlist number 11 because this one goes up to 11. Did I say that already?
I think you did.
Yeah, don't touch it. But anyway.
Don't even look at it.
But anyway, this is episode 11, brought to you by Premier. See, we're supposed to do that together.
Well,
God damn it, Dave.
Man. Okay. All right. Once again,
brought to you by
Premier Chiropractic.
Which Dr. John McDonald, 7113 West Jefferson Boulevard, Fort Wayne, Indiana, an affordable walk-in clinic. John has done so much for me just this week. Just this week, David, I'm telling you.
This many places. Don't stop it. Don't take pictures of me.
Burnt toast!
Okay.
I can tell just from looking at you.
Yes.
Wow. Cool.
But anyway, I want to thank John. I think you will too. If you go on in there to Premier Chiropractic and let John do an adjustment on you, I think you'll feel a world of difference. I always do. And we so appreciate John McDonald and Dr. John and Premier Chiropractic. Now, moving right along, we've decided to do a theme show. We've done those sometimes. This theme, I thought of other artists we could have used, but we didn't. We'll mention them as we go along and say we forgot. It's not like we
but there's only so much time, and it's like can't fit everybody in.
So we did two of various artists, and we left other people out completely. But
yes,
what we're doing is I've always been very, very inspired by the whole gestalt that was happening in Laurel Canyon in the late 1960s and early 1970s. That singer-songwriter vibe that really started before Crosby, Stills and Nash, but was sort of popularized and made something really hip to do by Crosby, Stills and Nash with their first album. Would you agree with that? I mean, there were people around doing that before them. They were doing that before they got together, but that was really where we had the singer-songwriter brought to the forefront, I think, 1969.
Absolutely.
So we're going to talk about the first two sets are going to be all singer-songwriter stuff. And if you follow the playlist, instead of going backwards up the playlist tonight, we're going to go down the playlist and play it in the order that we played it tonight.
You mean we're going to talk about it in the order that we played it?
Just don't interrupt me. If I make a mistake, just roll with it, man.
I'll nod and smile.
That's right.
Yes,
Thank
Todd.
you. Thank you very much. How many times do I have to tell you? So now I look to my left, your right, and go, the first one was Neil Young from his album called Harvest that came out on February 15th, 1972. Remember that because we got another album that came out the same day. Actually, we've got several albums that came out on the same day. So the singer-songwriter thing was like either everywhere or it was contagious. They all put out the same stuff at the same time.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but this is a song called Out on the Weekend. I was at a gig last weekend. I was out on the weekend, and I heard this playing in the place where I was playing. I heard this song playing in the place where I was setting up to play, and
Right.
I thought we could do like a singer-songwriter thing, and we could start with this song and sort of build out from there. A lot of people consider this to be one of, if not the greatest examples of singer-songwriter albums. Would you agree with that?
Harvest. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
This was a hugely successful album. It was Neil Young's, let's see, third album, fourth album.
Fourth album.
It came out in, like I said, in February of 72. He recorded this. Um, he There's an interesting story behind this, which I'll tell you now. He
Tell me now, Todd.
with the money that he made from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, he bought the Broken Arrow Ranch in yes, Redwood City, California. And while he was fixing it up, he injured his back really badly. So he couldn't stand up and play electric guitar. So this album became an acoustic album more than an electric album because of a back injury. How about that?
And also most of the album, but not this song. Most of the album was recorded in the barn at that ranch.
Right. And he would, I remember the story of how he brought Graham Nash, who will be liberally spoken of in this set, brought
Hmm.
Graham Nash out to his ranch, and he had massive speakers out in the house on the porch and massive speakers in the barn. So it was a
Hmm.
stereo mix between the house and the barn. And so they would sit out on the lake, probably imbibing in something, and listen to the mixes of his new album. And so at some point, Neil and Graham are sitting in a boat on his lake, and Neil stands up and yells at the engineer, I need more barn. So anyway, he was a very eccentric gentleman. He still is.
Yes.
But this would, like I said, this is still his best-selling album, Harvest. He
Hmm.
had two big hits off of it, Heart of Gold and Old Man. This was neither
Hmm.
of those. This was out on the weekend. Um, Neil Young on the acoustic guitar, the harmonica, and the vocal. Kenny Buttrey on the drums. Tim Drummond on the bass, and Ben Keith on the pedal steel guitar.
And they were later known as the Stray Gators, if I remember
Stray Gators,
correctly.
that's right. The
Yep.
Stray
Hmm.
Gators. Yep. I believe
Yeah.
they were credited as that on this album. So, and he
Yeah,
kept
they
going
were.
back.
He kind of named them that. I think after they finished recording the album, that just said that this is the Stray Gators that played on the album.
And he would come back to them. Maybe not all of them, but he would come back to them the same way that he came back to Crazy Horse.
Yeah.
And there's that movie about Crazy Horse where you see him screaming at the guys in the band. And I think that Neil might have not been the easiest guy to get along with. I think history tells us that. But
Yes.
but I think he kept going back to these players. I'm going to do this kind of album, so I'm going to get these guys.
Right.
After that, we heard James Taylor from a really underrated album, his sixth album called Gorilla, that came out in April of 1975. And I sent you a whole bunch of stuff this week. I sent you several James Taylor things, and you picked this one, and I appreciate
Hmm.
that. I thought Gorilla was actually the first James Taylor album that I bought as a kid. I would have been about 11.
Hmm.
And I just loved this album. And so I figure it's kind of a quintessential James Taylor album. It's a little slicker than his previous albums.
Yes.
It's produced by Russ Titleman and Lenny Waronker, who were sort of the bigwig producers at Warner Brothers at that time. Um, and he used all sorts of people on it. But this is a song called Lighthouse that features Graham Nash and David Crosby on background vocals. Remember those names because they're going to be on a bunch of songs that we
Yes.
play. They were staples in the studio scene, in the songwriting scene, in the Laurel Canyon scene. This is James Taylor on the acoustic guitar on the lead and background vocals, Randy Newman on the keyboards, Leland Sklar on the bass, Russ Kunkel on the drums, and as I said, Crosby and Nash on the background vocals. James Taylor. Gorilla and In the Pocket that came after this album, I thought were both really excellent albums. I thought they were
and
really
and both of them didn't do they did okay, but they didn't do numbers like some of his other stuff did.
right,
But I
right,
think
right.
both of those are essential listening if you're going to go down the James Taylor um,
Rabbit
path.
Hole. Yeah, yeah.
Rabbit
Um,
hole, yes.
yeah, but he did have hits off both of them. On this one, he had "How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You," the Marvin Gaye song that he covered, and then the
Hmm.
next one he had "Shower the People," and those were both
Yep.
really big hits. But they weren't like there weren't like multiple hits off the album.
Right.
That happened later. But anyway, after James Taylor, we heard Graham Nash from his first solo album called Songs for Beginners from May of 1971. And we played a song that he actually wrote for the Hollies called I Used to Be a King. There were a lot of songs on that album that he wrote for the Hollies that the Hollies didn't use. Graham Nash had the same issue that David Crosby had with the Byrds, and that he would write these songs that were unusual, and then they didn't want to do those. And so
Yeah.
he found, he was actually, I think both of those guys were. I don't think that David Crosby was bigger than the Byrds. The Byrds were probably the most popular American band for a while in the
Yeah.
1960s.
Yeah.
But I think that Crosby, Stills, and Nash um, were more well known than the Hollies, even though they did have big hits. I think
Now,
we're
just out
comparing
of
them. It's
curiosity,
a, it's a competition.
yeah, yeah. Now I read, now correct me if I'm wrong, this was, or I should say, Laughing by David Crosby was written as a counterpiece to this song.
I used
It
to be
was,
king.
yes.
No, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. I read that it was supposed to be a counterpiece, written as a companion piece to
Okay,
this
cool.
song.
All right. Well, the band is
Um,
incredible on this. Graham Nash on vocals and acoustic guitar, David Crosby on electric guitar, Jerry Garcia on pedal steel, Neil Young on piano, Phil Lesh on the bass, and John Barbada on the drums. John Barbada at that time was the touring drummer with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, since Neil Young insisted that they fire Dallas Taylor. And John Barbada later joined Jefferson Starship and was with them for many years. So he
okay.
was with the Turtles before that. So he had quite a resume at that time. Um, but yeah, I didn't know that about the Crosby companion piece. Those are both great songs, both of them.
Now, I was reading, and again, this song and the song we're going to follow it with, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know this better than I, both of those were kind of written about his breakup with Joni Mitchell.
No. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes is
Yeah.
about Stills' breakup with Judy Collins.
Oh, okay. Then
Hence the
I'm
Judy part.
combine the two somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would have been called Sweet Joni Blue Eyes, but he was the only one, I
Eh,
think. I think he was the only one who didn't have a thing with Joni Mitchell in the band. I think that Stills and Joni Mitchell knew each other, but she was Crosby's girlfriend for a while, and he sort of introduced her to everybody and produced her first album. And then it was Nash for a couple of years,
yeah.
and he wrote Our House about her. And
Hmm.
then I believe there was I don't know if this is true or not, but I believe there was a thing with Neil Young too. So Stills was the odd man out in the Joni sweepstakes.
Yes.
So there
Yes,
you go.
indeed.
But anyway, as Dave alluded to, the next song on our playlist was Crosby, Stills, and Nash with the Stephen Stills composition in four sections. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes from their album called Crosby, Stills, and Nash from May of 1969, a humongous hit. And this was a very long track that still got on the radio.
Yes.
Cool.
7 minutes, and that was very rare for radio to play at that
Yeah.
time, track that long. And it was their first single. So,
Yeah.
I think the fact that they came from so many different bands to make this band probably helped that. But
Yeah.
it's still pretty rare to have a 7-minute single chart, and especially as a first song.
So David Crosby and Graham Nash did the background vocals. Dallas Taylor played the drums, and Stephen Stills did everything else: the vocals, all the guitars, the bass, and the percussion. Pretty much that whole album and most of Deja Vu, other than the drums, was Stephen Stills. I mean,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Neil Young is only on about half of Deja Vu, um,
Yeah.
and
And
yeah,
usually it's the ones he's singing.
yeah, kind of, yeah. Sometimes the more you know, you go, oh, Okay, well, that's okay. Still more stills after that. The fifth track we played was Stephen Stills from his album called Manassas. That was supposed to be a band, but I'm not sure if that was actually a band. I think it was just something that Stephen Stills came up with. At that time, he was working all the time. They talk about how he and Chris Hillman, who were in this band, um, had a big falling out midway through because Stephen Stills would record for like 6 or 7 days at a time without a break,
Hmm.
like all day and all night. Now, what kind of a thing would keep you up for 6 or 7 days?
I think Rick James said it best when he said cocaine's a hell of a
Hell
drug.
of a drug, it is. Yep. I remember the stories about how Rolling Stone did an interview with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young on their 1974 tour, the stadium tour.
Hmm.
And Stills claimed to have gone to Vietnam. He was convinced that he had been in Vietnam when actually he man, he was with Buffalo Springfield. He was not in Vietnam. So yeah, cocaine is a hell of a drug. But this is a song called Song of Love. And by the way, Manassas is a really great double album. It's a really
Yes, it
great
is.
album.
Yeah.
Maybe his last really great album, because the second Manassas album was not so good and
No.
did not sell so well. And that was it for them. But it's Stephen Stills on the vocals, the guitar, and the keyboards. Chris Hillman, who came out of the Byrds with the vocals and guitar. Al Perkins on the pedal steel guitar. Paul Harris on the keyboards. Fuzzy Samuels, Furry. Calvin Fuzzy Samuel on the bass, a British bass player. Dallas Taylor, there he is again on the drums, and Joe Lala on percussion. Fun fact about Joe Lala. You remember the song Ride, Captain Ride by Blues Image?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's Joe Lala singing that.
Oh really? I
Yeah,
didn't
that's Joe
realize that.
Lala, the guy that played with Stephen Stills for years and years. After that, we heard Leonard Cohen, who I'm going to read this down, but I would like for you to comment on Leonard Cohen. This
Oh,
is
I've got some things to say.
my favorite Leonard Cohen song. This is it, Suzanne,
Hmm.
from his album called Songs of Leonard Cohen that was released 2 days after Christmas, which is a terrible marketing move by your record company. But there you go. There are actually two of those too. Two albums that were
Hmm.
released 2 days after Christmas. That was how different the recording industry was at that time. But anyway, two
Yeah.
days after Christmas in 1967, it was produced by John Simon, who did not get along well with Leonard Cohen. But later he produced, I believe, the first two band albums, the band.
I
But
think
this
so.
is a
Yeah.
song, Suzanne. It was his debut album. He was discovered by John Hammond, the talent scout for Columbia, who discovered Billie Holiday and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Bob Dylan. Yeah, him too. And Bruce
Yeah.
Springsteen. Hammond dropped out midway. Hammond was going to produce this album and dropped out midway through because he couldn't deal with Leonard either. Leonard had been a very popular poet. I don't know if you can be a popular poet, but he was a well-known poet out of Canada. I know he had several books out and then decided to be a folk singer, and a very impressive one of the great
Yeah.
songwriters of all time. So
Hmm.
this, as I said, this is Suzanne. It's my vote for the second verse is one of the great verses of all time. So Leonard Cohen, run me down on your take on Leonard Cohen.
Well, first of all, I want to say a few things about this song, then we can talk more about
Well,
Leonard Cohen.
yes, go.
So this was originally just a poem. It was in a book called Parasites of Heaven from 1966.
Okay,
He had written it as a poem before that. It was written about a dancer by the name of Suzanne Verdal.
okay,
And contrary to some of the lyrics in the song, they were never romantic. This was more of a just a connection between the two of them that is uh explored in this song. But they were never a romantic couple. But they would literally sit out and have tea with orange slices in it and just have conversations.
hmm
Um, and this song is one of the most covered songs of all time.
yeah. This and Hallelujah
Um,
both.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But Cohen, you and I have gone round and round about Cohen. You don't like
Well,
much of his.
those albums where it was just like a Casio
Yeah,
keyboard. I just
exactly.
hate that shit, man. I'm
I
sorry.
know, I know you do, and I do respect that up to a point because it's like yes, I understand that sound. And, when I focus on that, it bugs me too. But man, that songwriting during that
But,
period was
you know,
so
man,
good.
you could say that Paul Buchanan did the same kind of thing with the Blue Nile in the 80s,
Yes.
right? But that was actually I don't know. That was a vocalist. I don't think of Leonard Cohen as a vocalist. You know what I mean? I felt like there needed to
No,
be
but he
more
was a
going
poet.
on
And
musically. I
he,
know. And I'm not dogging that. I'm just
yeah.
saying, he did to me, he didn't have enough going on vocally to carry the fact
Well,
to distract me from the fact that all you did was turn on a drum beat on a Casio,
well, I,
which
I,
was
I
like a
can appreciate
$30
that.
keyboard at that time, you know.
But, but, but at some point, the vocal becomes the instrument.
I know.
And it's just kind of like Tom Waits. A lot of people can't stand Tom Waits. I thoroughly adore Tom Waits, but it's because his vocal sound, which is not good, is a piece of music itself, and it's kind of like Leonard Cohen is. His voice becomes the instrument, and that becomes what you fall in love with, or don't, as the
Okay.
case may be.
Okay. All right. Cool, cool. So
That would be my argument on Leonard.
that was Leonard Cohen's Songs of Leonard Cohen, the album Suzanne, one of the great songs
Hmm.
of all time. We're featuring singer-songwriters tonight, as I said. After that, Todd Rundgren, another really great singer-songwriter from his album called Something Anything, which was his third LP, a massive
Hmm.
hit. And that was released on February 15th, 1972, the same day as Neil Young Harvest. So that was a
Okay,
good day musically. Um,
good day
we
for music.
we played a song called Torch Song. The first three sides of that album are all Todd Rundgren playing all the instruments, and this is one of those. And then
Hmm.
the fourth side is recorded live in the studio, and that's where the song "Hello, It's Me" came from. Was the fourth
Hmm.
side. I felt like this and a lot of his other early stuff was, and he spent a lot of time trying to shake comparisons to Laura Nyro, a male Laura Nyro or a male Carole King. Um,
Yep.
and I think that you can hear, especially the influence of Laura Nyro on this song. Um, and I think he really dug that stuff, and I think that that's pretty evident and I love his approach to that kind of song. I
Yeah.
think those are some of his best songs. Um,
And I just love. I mean, it's like it seems like it's going to be kind of a, because a torch song is a romantic ballad and
right.
whatnot. It seems like it's going to have that feel to it, but really, the song is really breaking down um, identity and desire and detachment. And I think that's really cool to take a love song and really kind of break it down to those essence.
But he always did that. And to me,
Yeah.
what's amazing to me about Rundgren is whether you like all of his material or not, he was extremely prolific, and those were real songs with real lyrics that were
Yeah.
different. They weren't your typical kind of, um, they weren't cliched songs. He even
Hmm.
has a song called Cliche, and
Yes.
he's back out on tour this summer again with the same band that he's been touring with for a few years. I would assume they're
Hmm.
playing a lot of the same songs, but but if you get a chance to see Todd Rundgren, go see Todd Rundgren.
Yeah, the first two dates are here in Chicago, in St. Charles and Des Plaines. They're not too far from me. I'm trying to track down some tickets for it, so
We'll
I'll
go.
let you know if I go
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, go. After that, we heard another very interesting person, Judy Sill, from her album called Heart Food. It was her second album. It came out in March of 1973. And we heard a real classic, a real kind of cult classic that people didn't know about at the time called The Kiss. That's
Hmm.
taken on this kind of mythical quality in the years since. She was the first artist signed to Asylum Records by David Geffen. Not the Eagles, not Linda Ronstadt, not Jackson Brown. Judy
Judy
Sill.
Sill.
And Judy Sill had a very, very interesting road to that. She learned how to play keyboards and guitar in reform school after she got busted for a series of armed robberies. And at times, to support her drug habit, she took to prostitution, which is something that you can't say about, oh, Carly Simon.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, depending on what you're talking about.
Well, let's just leave it. Let's just it's on the ground. Leave it on the ground. But Judy still. I mean, it's just so that song is so personal and it's so unique. And I guess she just didn't play games with anybody. She was very
No.
outspoken. very opinionated, and I think that really, and she wasn't quote unquote a typical beautiful woman, and she her songs were her songs were kind of they weren't your typical songs either. You know what I mean?
No, there was a heavy influence of gospel in her stuff.
And Bach.
And Bach, yeah,
Yeah.
I was actually just going to say that there's a lot of Bach and Baroque influences in this song alone,
Yeah.
let alone the rest of her album. But I just like the song. While it seems like it should be about um, uh, romance or whatnot, it's not. It's about transcendence.
Right. Right.
The whole song
It's
is about
about
transcendence.
it's about finding your version of God on this
Yeah,
plane.
yeah,
Which,
yeah.
which, there are people who actually look for that, right?
Hmm.
Right? Yeah. Some of them might be on this Zoom right now.
I don't know who you're talking.
I don't know who I'm talking about either. I don't know what I'm saying. What did I say that out loud?
This one goes to
Anyway,
11.
this one goes to 11. Don't touch it.
Don't even look at it.
Don't look at it. After that, we heard the one and only Joni Mitchell from her
Oh
album
yes.
called Hejira from December of 1976. Once again, came out 4 days before Christmas. What a marketing move for Asylum Records. But that was her eighth LP, it looks like, eighth LP. And
Yeah.
it was a song that she wrote about Sam Shepard. She was having an
Hmm.
affair with Sam Shepard, who was married at the time, and they met each other on the Bob Dylan Rolling Thunder Review tour the previous year, which there's a movie about that. There's a Scorsese film about that, is there not?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. And it was sort of a traveling circus kind of thing. And Sam Shepard was supposed to travel along and write about it. And I believe there is a book about that, at least one. There's one called The Motel Chronicles that Shepard wrote that sort of is about that to a certain extent. But this is called Coyote. Joni Mitchell on the vocals and the guitar, Jaco Pastorius on the bass, and Bobby Hall on the percussion. Joni Mitchell, Coyote.
The thing I really like about that song lyrically is that it's almost like she's having a conversation with either the protagonist of the song or the audience.
Yeah.
And she kind of developed that. She used that a lot later on, but this was kind of the first like real use of that. It felt like in
Right.
her songs. Or there was most of her stuff before that was very folk music oriented and whatnot. And this was when she really started to branch off lyrically, I thought. So
And and she's developing, well, and this we can't leave alone the sparseness of this.
oh yeah.
Her songs became much more and more sparse around this time,
Hmm.
the Hejira album. But there's a detached narrative to this. I mean, it's
Yes.
about her, but she has become more detached and less. It's less about how she feels or being dependent upon anybody.
Right, right, right.
It's more like reportage
I
about her romance than it is I'm feeling this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or the transient relationship. It's like
Right, right,
yeah.
right. Which was kind of popular in the 1970s.
Yes.
But anyway, after that, we heard Jimmy Webb from his album called Live at the Royal Albert Hall, 1972. That was his version of a song that was made popular by Glenn Campbell called Galveston. And I never
Hmm.
understood that that was written from the perspective of someone in Vietnam.
Yes. It was written as a soldier, and it was kind of an anti-war song,
Yeah.
a subtle anti-war song.
Right, right. And
Hmm.
he wrote so many songs. He won his first Grammy for Best Song of the Year at the age of 21.
Hmm.
Um, he wrote, I think his first big one was Up, Up and Away by the Fifth Dimension. He wrote MacArthur Park for originally by Richard Harris. Um, it's several songs. By the time I get to Phoenix, and my own personal favorite, Wichita Lineman, that Glenn Campbell did. Glenn Campbell also did this one.
Yep.
Um, Art Garfunkel did two entire albums of his material.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, he wrote a lot of songs for a lot of people and he was a writer, he was an arranger, he was a producer, and just some amazing stuff there.
Yeah.
Jimmy Webb.
True master of the words
Right,
on
right.
paper for songs, man. He was
Absolutely.
great.
After that, we heard Elton John from a huge breakthrough album, and he'd already become pretty big, but this was like the one that put him into the stratosphere, where we went from like being a singer-songwriter guy into being the guy with the feather bow and the
And the
outrageous
giant
outfit,
glasses.
giant glasses, and the platform shoes.
Yeah.
Um, and so this was the one that changed him around. But there was an album called Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. It was his seventh LP, probably his third that year, because it came out in
Hmm.
October of 1973. And at that time, he was doing 2 or 3 albums a year, which is pretty astounding. And once
Hmm.
again, cocaine is a hell of a drug. Um, that was a song, one of my favorite Elton John songs, the last song on the album called
Yeah.
Harmony. And it features uh, his regular band at that time, which I thought was really great. Elton John on the vocals and the piano, and then the background vocals were all done by his backup band, Davy Johnstone, who also played guitar, Dee Murray, who played bass, and Nigel Olsson, who played drums. The string arrangement was by Del Newman, who's also on another song coming up here. Del Newman is that's interesting because up until that point, he had always used a string arranger named Paul Buckmaster, who was kind of like his lead guitarist for a while. If you think about like the Madman Across the Water album or Tumbleweed Connection, the string parts are like as integral as like they use the strings instead of like another instrument. Not that strings aren't another instrument, but instead of like using a guitar solo, he would have like Paul Buckmaster do a big string break, elaborate string break.
Right.
Uh,
And this kind of breaks the tradition of what we have done for the show so far. Everybody else has been kind of singer songwriter. This is singer and songwriter,
yeah,
because of course Bernie Taupin writing the lyrics for
right.
this.
And
So it
they
kind
were
of breaks
incredible.
our.
They were
Yeah.
incredible and
Yeah.
very, very, very prolific. And I'm not going
Yes.
to say that all their albums were great, but on every album between Elton John in 1970 and Blue Moves in 1976,
There was always something great on
there's
every one
always
of
at
them.
least 4 or 5
Yeah.
killer songs on those
Yeah.
albums.
Yeah.
Just
And
absolutely
then
killer.
when they parted ways, ooh, uh, Elton
Well,
kind
he
of
was doing
suffered.
some different stuff. There was a Single Man, and then there was that disco album.
Yeah.
And I think that there were a lot of people that really, it was like MTV a couple years later when the disco thing came along. For some reason, everybody wanted to go and do that, even though it was so divisive. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was so, I
Hmm.
mean, you were either into it or not. And if you watched WKRP in Cincinnati in the late 70s, every week you heard Johnny Fever, Dr. Johnny Fever, bitching about disco,
Yeah.
because rock and roll people were not into that, and if you
Yeah.
did a disco song, you were, a
Well,
traitor.
I think this kind of falls back to the idea of drugs, and like
The
Mick
cocaine was
Jagger,
better at the
Elton
disco.
John. What was that?
The cocaine was better at the disco, man.
Yes, exactly. And the party was better at the disco, so they wanted to make their own music to be heard at the party, and that's why a lot of the stuff, and it was also selling, so they acquiesced to that.
I was
So
told that that was the reason that the Grateful Dead did a disco song, was that Bob Weir and Mickey Hart were hanging out in discos trying to pick up chicks and
hmm.
decided to do a disco song because that was part of their,
Yeah.
once again, to use the word gestalt, that was part of their mindset back then.
Yeah.
Was, if you're around it all the time, it seeps into you.
Now
Yeah.
changing the subject slightly.
Yeah.
This song Harmony was released as the B-side to Benny and the Jets and almost became the hit single because a lot of DJs were not playing. They played Benny and the Jets, but then they play Harmony as well, and it also started to pick up some steam. Never quite the steam that got it off the ground as a hit single,
Right.
but it almost became the single because it was the B-side. So
Benny and the
got some
Jets
play there for a while.
Benny and the Jets got him on Soul Train, and it was a #1 R&B
Yep.
song.
Yep.
And that was the first song that I heard that I was really, really into from Elton John. I remember buying the
Hmm.
first album I ever bought with my own money was Elton John's Greatest Hits in 1974. Excuse me. And um and I remember having that and then he was just putting out singles for a while. Philadelphia Freedom,
Yep. Yep.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, those weren't on albums.
Yeah, and
And
the only way you could get those on albums was buy one of those greatest hits packages that
yeah,
came
but you
out.
couldn't even get I had to go out and buy the singles. There was
Yeah.
After this was I want to say the Caribou album was after this, I want to say.
Hmm.
And that was a completely different album than like a singer-songwriter album. It was still,
Yeah.
there's still great stuff on there, but I don't think he really came back to the singer-songwriter thing after Goodbye Yellow Brick Road as heavily as he had before. He was still very serious as a singer-songwriter, but I don't think it was a different flavor after that because he was so
Yeah.
big. It's so big. He big.
Yes.
It's big.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby. After that, we closed out the set with Leon Russell from his sixth LP called Will o' the Wisp that came out in April of 1975, a track called Bluebird, one of my favorite Leon Russell songs. Now, Leon Russell was actually Claude Russell Bridges from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Came out
Hmm.
to California in the early 60s and became part of the Wrecking Crew, the session group that played on everybody's albums. So that's him on the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man, Turn, Turn, Turn. That's Leon Russell. He played with the Beach Boys. He played with Bob Dylan. He played with Frank Sinatra. I believe that's him on Strangers in the Night. How about that?
Yep. He
Um,
was in the Wrecking Crew as well, was he not for a while?
what I just said with my voice.
I did not hear you
It's
say
amazing
Wrecking
how you
Crew.
can
My
sit here
apologies.
and we're looking at each other and you can see my lips move, and yet,
Yeah,
hello,
but they're out of sync.
is this on?
They're out of sync. Your lips are moving against
Oh,
yours.
for God's sake, Dave. Excuses. He also played with Ike and Tina Turner, Sonny and Cher, and the Rolling Stones, not all at the same time.
And didn't he play with the Wrecking Crew? Just
Yeah, yeah. There's a very funny story that Cher tells in the Wrecking Crew documentary. And
hmm.
um, he got drunk and came in late to a session for Phil Spector, right? And
Hmm.
Phil said to him something. He got on the talk, the over intercom, and he said, "Leon, have you ever heard the term respect?" And Leon jumped up on the piano and said, "Phil, have you ever heard the term fuck you?" I believe I'm paraphrasing there, but I believe that's
Yeah.
right. But anyway,
Good enough. Good enough.
interesting stuff going on here too. There's a really great vocal performance on here from his future wife Mary McCreary, who did an album with him. The next album I think was called the Wedding Album.
Wedding album.
Mary
Yeah.
McCreary, she had been with a group called Little Sister, a background vocal group that was on two Sly and the Family Stone albums. There's a Riot going on and Fresh. They had done a lot of other background vocal stuff as well. Really great vocal performance from her. And the drummer's name on this is Teddy Jack Eddy. Now, you know what this is? You know where I'm going with this, right? You remember who
I think
Teddy
so.
Jack Eddy is?
Go ahead.
Teddy Jack Eddy is Gary Busey, the
That's right.
Gary Busey. Yeah, on drums. Now, I mean, Gary Busey is like a human meme, you know,
Yeah.
and you think of him as any one of the insane characters, including himself. If you've ever seen the film Gonzo, you ever seen that film, the
Oh
Gonzo
yeah.
movie, where he is giving instructions to be how to be interviewed. Remember that? That's
Hmm.
just nuts. But
Yep.
anyway, Teddy Jack Eddy, better known as Gary Busey on the drums, no lie. Leon Russell on the vocals, the keyboards, the guitar, and the bass, because Leon Russell could do it all. And
He
that was
could.
Bluebird, or yeah, Bluebird, Leon Russell. So
Also
anyway,
a song that's been covered a lot.
yes.
Hmm.
He actually did a song called Hummingbird that B.B. King did as well. And he had his own
Hmm.
label for a while at that time, Shelter Records. And he
Hmm.
with put Freddie King, he did several Freddie King albums
I
on.
think didn't he release the first two Tom Petty albums as well on
Could be,
Shelter?
could be.
I think so.
I don't
I
know.
think they were.
I don't know. But I mean, Leon gets I mean, you got to include him in singer-songwriters because dude wrote Song for You. You know,
Hmm.
that's a singer-songwriter song if there ever was one.
And
So
it's a masterpiece.
absolutely. So we're moving on into the second set. We're going to start the second set with somebody that we played in the first set because we just can't get enough of Joni Mitchell. I also think personally, and I think she agrees with me on this, that Joni Mitchell is the greatest singer-songwriter of all time.
Of course, she agrees.
There's there's a quote there's a quote from her where an interviewer asks, um, "Do you think of yourself as the one of the best female singer-songwriters of all time?" And she said, "Female." So there you go, man. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Hmm.
But Anyway, we're going to start the next set with Joni Mitchell from her huge breakthrough album for her called Court and Spark from January of 1974. Her first album working with jazz musicians and her sixth LP overall. We'll play a track called Troubled Child, which is a very interesting narrative about an emotionally unstable person, which she wrote songs about emotionally unstable people. She did that back in the day,
Yeah.
more than three or four.
Well, I read that this was about her own journey to. She went through some therapy and it didn't really take, and so she kind of wrote it about that. But it's not really about the therapy session as much as it is about just um, being isolated and lonely.
Right. But
Even
but the
despite the lit references to like the sanitized room at the beginning of the
yeah, I was
song.
just going to say the first line in the song is up in the sterilized room where they let you go crazy.
Yeah,
That's an unusual opening line for a
yes, it
song.
is. Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
that's not um, kiss me or whatever. It's a
Yeah.
whole different thing. But we're going to start the next set. We're doing singer-songwriters, mostly California-based singer-songwriters. That's been a passion of mine for a while. There's a really well, I mean, there's at least two films. There's one that's a two-part thing that you can check out on Amazon Prime, called Laurel Canyon. That's really good. But there are several
Hmm.
films about Laurel Canyon. There's a film about Henry Diltz and uh, Gary Burden, the guys that did all the album covers back in the day. You remember those guys?
Oh
Like
yeah.
they did
Hmm.
Blue, and they did the first Crosby, Stills and Nash album, and they did some Mama Cass albums, and they did the Doors, Morrison Hotel. And there's a great documentary about them, and they sort of get into that whole Laurel Canyon thing too. And I think that
Hmm.
was really an interesting time where there really was like a countercultural scene of artists. And I think they really inspired each other. So that I was trying to keep to that to a certain extent, although we do step outside of that. Uh,
Hmm.
Leon Russell wasn't part of it. Well, Leon Russell was kind of part of that. But
Yeah.
but anyway, this is Joni Mitchell. We're coming up in the second part. Remember that what we're doing here is we're following a playlist. So if you're watching this, below the video is the Burnt Toast Show channel. Click on that and then click on playlists and go to playlist 11 because this one goes up
Goes
to
to
11.
11.
Let me say that three more times tonight. But
And it'll conjure a demon.
right, Beetlejuice. But anyway, the this is Joni Mitchell with the second part. So now we're into the second part, and Dave, you and I will take a nap for a little while, and we'll come back and refreshed. We'll
Sure.
come back refreshed, and it'll be fun.
Yay.
Yay, refreshingness. So this is going downhill in a big hurry. Here's more music.
Yes.
Yes.
Burnt toast!